So that is Barnes Courtney with Champion. We had no takers on that. This is got to be a new thing. We got to start the show. Somebody's got to, in the chat, name that tune before we get started with these things. We have any Barnes Courtney fans out there? No, nobody's putting their hands up for some Barnes Courtney.
It was a good vibe, though, Steve. Good vibe.
There are so many great artists out there. I have always just kind of been a mainstream guy, but I love letting Apple Music kind of do its thing and find me some stuff that is upbeat to get us cranking. But welcome to Friday. Let's go. Let's go. I am excited. I hope you guys are excited. We got our lenders with us today. Hopefully they are going to add some value. But let's start with a little bit more on the Steve Bartlett interview and Evie. I am going to push this thing until you guys all watch this interview. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. A lot of respect for what she has done in her career, because I wasn't even aware of who she was. And I really love the way Steve runs his podcast. So I wanted to just share a little takeaway from the podcast that I was picking up on the ride in today. And it has to do with empathy. And I think I'm somebody that struggles with having empathy a lot of times. And it's interesting because apparently, I think she said it was like a Columbia or a Harvard study. I think it was Harvard, looking at empathy. And the more that you've been through, you'd think you'd have more empathy. But it actually works the opposite way. If you've been through a lot and you try a lot and you've failed a lot and you've done a lot of things and maybe you've had a tough life, you're actually more likely to be less empathetic for those around you because you're like, I've done that. Why can't you do that? Right? I've been there. I'm struggling with this. And the more things that you are juggling, and she kind of mentioned the higher up that you go. So from individual producer to management to, building a business, like maybe you are taking on leadership roles in your church at a nonprofit, right? As you're kind of working the ranks up over there, you tend to have more things on your plate and you can get into situations where somebody who is maybe a little bit lower on the totem pole or hasn't had the life experience that you've had is struggling with something, and maybe you're pushing it aside because you are busy or you are trying to solve some bigger problem. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting take and explains maybe for some of the reasons why my empathy can lack at times. So definitely something that I'm working on. Love to hear what you guys think. Anybody have some thoughts around this topic? What do we got? Not everybody at once.
I'll jump in on it. I think because I probably relate to it a little bit from a lot of things you just said there, and I could probably agree with it that it's the way you explained it was as you moved up through the rankings and stuff, you actually lose some empathy. I think it's maybe not that you lose empathy, you kind of lose touch with it because maybe you've been through some of the problems so many times. They don't seem like quite as big of a problem or it's the end of the world. Like when you first start your career and maybe you only have one client and something goes wrong or something happens and it's a much bigger deal to you than it might be to the broker owner because he's dealing with 100 different problems. So it might not be that you don't have empathy really. It's just kind of like, all right, I've had that happen 600 times. It isn't the end of the world. It's just part of the career and it's part of the growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the relay that I kind of wanted to make for us as agents is doing a deal. You might be doing your 100th deal. That buyer is doing their first one. Right. So I think we can lose touch with, right? They're doing their first mortgage. Right. So we look at it and go, yeah, there's going to be 30 documents that they're going to ask for. And they're looking at it like 30 documents. Holy cow. This week, tomorrow, I got to get, so we, I think we can lose touch a little bit. Margaretta.
Did you talk to my boyfriend?
Are you
I think
struggling with this?
did you, I think it comes from both ends when you think about it. It's like when you're very young, new at something, you probably will have less experience. Therefore, you'll be either overcompensating or just making things happen. But you just don't know how to react to the situation. It might come off as you don't have empathy because you're just faking till you're making it. And on the other hand, when you have the experience, you just might consider that, like, well, what the hell's wrong with everybody else? Why aren't you like up at the level that I'm at? Because that's where I expect you to be. So I can see that, and I think we live in a world where we are just so much, especially being on this call and other things that we do and compensate. We are so much more conscious, I think, about reality and gratitude, which I think it's a great thing, and I think that will ground us, and that is the key to this problem. Because I can see it being from both ends, and really issue. And you really spark something in me because I being an immigrant and all that, and coming through a lot of things, I do take it like, why aren't you people doing all this? Like, what's stopping you from doing it? You have the language, you have the knowledge. Get going. Like, there's people who don't speak English and they make things happen. And what's your excuse? You're an American. Go. Enough said.
Yeah, I love that. And there was a little nugget in there, Margareta, about joining this call. And the original genesis of this call was for the knowledge, right? It's come on here, not just for personal development, but for actual real estate deal knowledge, right? Which is why I'm encouraging you guys to jot the little things down that happen during your interactions every single day, and then bring them to this call, because there's just all these little scenarios. There's so many different ways a real estate deal can go. It is so extremely difficult to train to be a real estate agent, right? You need a call like this. I mean, you can take the marketing classes and how to do an open house and how to take a listing, right? And, brokerages try and do that training. But the real struggle is the day-to-day stuff that happens, because every single deal is different. And so that was the genesis of what we're trying to build here, is come share all this weird stuff so that when it happens to you, oh, no big deal. We've talked about that before. Matter of fact, we talked about it for 20 minutes. I feel like I'm an expert, yet I've never been through it. So,
and it's also the support of this group, that we get, because the other people might be bombarding you and saying you're an idiot, you're this, you're whatever, right? But we are supporting each other, and that is a beautiful thing, and I appreciate that.
Chris, I saw your hand up. What do you have?
I can't even say it now, looking at Adam's hat. I'm dying right now. What is happening? You going to Mexico? Where are you going?
But Friday.
What I was going to say,
Florida.
better boy. What I was going to say is I struggle with just the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm an empath to the max. Like if one of my agents that I'm working with, or one of my buyers or sellers, is struggling with something, I feel it too deeply. Like there is a middle ground to that. Like I want to save the world. You know what I mean? I want to help everybody. And I have worked on that a lot. But I think empathy is really one of those things that if you don't have it, you have to work at it to get it. And when you have too much of it, you have to work at letting them have their own path. So it is a very fine line.
Yeah, the final comment, I think, is it's one of the keys to life, is letting them find the way. It's probably the biggest battle that I have with my wife. Right, we have a really strong relationship. We work really, really hard, but I think that the area that we butt heads the most is with raising our kids. And, she wants to do the motherly thing, and I understand that. And I want to just kind of send them into the world and let them screw everything up, as long as they're not killing themselves or doing something that's illegal. My opinion, that's how they're going to learn. The more things that they can do, the faster in life that they can do them, the faster they can mess them up. So it irks the heck out of me when they're not trying things, doing things, right? Be a creator, not a consumer. is what I try and drive into to my kids, right? When you're sitting in front of the TV or you're scrolling on your phone, you're a consumer, right? If you want to be on social, be the creator on social. Be the producer that's creating the videos, that's creating the messages, that's leading the way, right? So I'm not saying, don't do tech, don't do social, do those things, but be the producer. Dan, I see your hand up. What do you got?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of expand again on that empathy thing, because it is something maybe on my end that I also have identified before that I kind of struggle with sometimes, because, again, when you talk about, doing so many different transactions, or, we have a pipeline of so many different clients, and they're come from all different walks of life. And it is something like Chris had mentioned that, if you're not naturally like that, then it does take some time where you have to kind of force yourself to do it, and stop and just kind of put yourself in their shoes, and just slow down and just say, listen, try to break it down and make it as simple and comforting as you can for somebody. But yeah, it takes work to do it sometimes.
Yeah, not easy. Not easy at all. Anybody else want to chime in on this topic? Have some strong feelings?
For me, I don't know how to put my hand up, but Steve.
So you can't talk anymore. You're a daily on the show. You got to figure out how to put your hand up.
I'm trying to look it
I'll
all
let it go
over.
this time.
Okay. But as you go up in your job management, and even in life, when to cut someone out of your life, or cut that person out of your business because it's not producing for you, it's not healthy for you, is another thing I believe in.
Yeah, Evie in this interview with Steve just drives this point home of just, you've got to be doing things because you want to do them with no expectations of how the other side is going to receive it, because people are just, they're people, and they're going through shit, and they're going through life, and they're doing the best that they can. But depending on when you catch them, or what season or chapter of their life that they are in, who knows how they're going to react. Even if you are absolutely doing the best that you can for somebody, you just don't know how they're going to react. And if you're going to let how they react or how they perceive you affect you in your emotional state, you're going to be in trouble, And I think this is something that I struggle with as well, of trying to be a people pleaser and trying to, so the empathy thing is different for me than just trying to help. I absolutely want to try and it's the driving force behind the way I've always run our brokerage, is how do we put the agents in the absolute best position to win? And at times I might be making a decision where they might not think of it that way. But that's always how I'm making my decisions. Is this better for the agents, moving forward long term? And if we can build those environments, I think at the end of the day, you might not see it, just like with your kids. They might not see it right now in the moment. But I think at the end of the day, and it could be years, unfortunately, until you see the results, they will realize that you're trying to do the best thing. It's just, if you're looking for the gratitude or the respect right now, I think it's highly unlikely for a lot of people. Linda, what do you got?
Well, I would just like to say that I'm so very grateful for this this forum, because it's such a beautiful, safe space for all of us to come and to talk about these things that otherwise we might not feel comfortable doing, feeling like, we're supposed to be professional, we're supposed to know everything. And so it's really important to have this place where we can bounce ideas, thoughts, situations, and scenarios off of each other, and understand that it's life, and life doesn't follow a perfect playbook. So it's very, very critical for us to have this, and it's very special and unique. You don't find this everywhere. To your point, different brokerages, they want to, give you training and so forth, but they don't offer this, where you come together and say, oh my gosh, this happened, what do you all think? You know, what experiences have you had that can help moving forward? All of these beautiful, beautiful things that we get to have with each other. And I think, Steve, that you need to point out to your wife that this is what you're trying to also do for your children, and that you're providing, you and your wife are providing them the safest space to run scenarios, and to feel like it's okay not to have it all figured out. Let's come back, let's talk about it, let's see how we can strategize moving forward, and fill your toolbox with tools to equip you for future, right? You can't think of everything in every scenario, but if you've got sanctuary, safe space where these children can come and know that they're going to be respected, understood, listened to, valued, all of these things, then when you send them out in the world, they're so much better equipped, just like you're equipping us. And it's a gift. It's beautiful. It doesn't happen everywhere, and it must be recognized for the really special gift that it is. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Linda. I appreciate the kind words, and I want to use that as a transition into, what do we have going on? What are you struggling with on a deal? What are you struggling with in your business? What's going well on a deal? Hey, I did this, and I don't typically do that, and it went really well for me. Anybody have something? Unique negotiation going on? Repair request? What do we got?
Well, I'll jump in, Steve.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, we had a busy week, and a big part of kind of what I had going on was.
Hey, Dan, we're a little muffled on your mic.
Sorry, it's going right through my laptop here. Is that better?
A little better. Maybe just sit nice and close. Yeah.
Right here. So really was busy with a lot of people this week that kind of had been sitting on the sidelines for a while, that have kind of started to come back out of the woodwork. So we've got a couple contracts under, a couple deals under contract this week, where these people had been pre-approved like back in October, even like sometime late last fall, just people that were maybe kind of sitting there, didn't even do an application yet. But it's kind of important, I think, to kind of look at that and realize, let's make sure that we're going back and we are following up with those old leads from several months ago, because, you know, if they didn't buy then, they're still getting ready, and they're probably thinking that, you know, this spring they've been kind of waiting for this spring market. So starting to see some activity from those people on the fence, which is a good thing.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. We got any questions? We can turn it into Finance Friday. We got some lender questions. Linda, your hand is still up. I assume it's lingering. Go ahead, Eric.
We talked about on the monthly call the other day. I'll reiterate it just because maybe somebody missed the call or something like that, or just to kind of bring it back up because it's Finance Friday. Something I had talked about on the call the other day was offering the clients a 1% lower rate for the first year of their mortgage. As I kind of explained it that the other day, I think it's good for if you're out and you got somebody on the fence of a listing and they're like, you know, I really want to sell this house. I want to downsize or I want to upsize, but I got a 3%. I don't want to go to 6 or 7%. So rates have been dropping, which is a good thing for all of us. So I would say right now we can probably get people right around 6.5%. So by doing this 1% buy down, that Semper actually pays for. We don't have to go, you know, like the old days of the 3-2-1 where we had to ask the seller for a whole bunch of concessions, because it's only a 1 year and it's only 1%. Semper will actually cover the cost of it. So we can offer them that 1% lower rate. So somebody might be on the fence of listing because they got a 3 or a 4%. To only have to go to 5.5%, they might be willing to make the move. So it might get you that listing and then also give you the ability to bring them over to us as a buyer. So definitely something a little extra to put in your toolbox. You know, if you're talking to somebody about selling a house and they're stuck on the rate, listen, talk to our lender. Maybe there's something they can do. I know they offer this thing where they give you a lower rate for the first year. You know, just have the conversation, and then maybe we do some mock payments and things like that. It could be the difference maker that gets them to list with you and gets them to work with us as a buyer.
Yeah, great share, Eric, and just thanks for bringing that back top of mind for everybody as well. Romani, I saw your hand up. What do you got?
Eric knows I just forwarded to Eric, but I am working with the two ladies. They are elderly and they are on the Social Security. So my question is, so they're like two people or three girls trying to get together. So can people with no income and just on Social Security with 1,500 or 2 grand or a no down payment can get a pre-approval letter, or will they be able to buy a home? I've never done this, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it's Social Security is completely unacceptable income. It's all going to come down to once we get all the information from all the parties. I know the clients that you're talking about. It's going to come down to how much they make combined and how much other debts they have, how much is left for us to pre-approve them for a mortgage. So Social Security is definitely a viable income. It's just going to come down to
Okay.
debt versus income, how high we can pre-approve them.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Eric.
Linda.
I do have a question. We have a seller who offered a $5,000 closing cost credit to a buyer to try to be competitive with some of the new construction down here. And we had a taker. And the buyer's agent asked a really good question. He said, hey, if our closing costs are less than $5,000, what happens to the overage? And we said, not quite sure.
So the way closing cost credits work is it's kind of use it or lose it on the buyer side.
Okay.
So it would actually go back to the seller, but their lender should be smart enough to say, hey, we're not using it all. Why don't we buy your rate down a little bit so that we make sure we use it all so you don't lose it, so you get a benefit of that money. So hopefully the buyer's lender's paying attention to those numbers, because that's exactly what I would say to a client. If we had too much seller paid credit, I would say, hey, why don't we use this to buy your rate down another 8?
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Let's just stay on that topic, Eric. I haven't hit that on the call too much. Has there been any change, with the totals for credits with all the commission stuff that's going on? Is everything kind of leveled out with regards to that? Are we still like different breaking points depending on the loan type?
Yeah, so all the maximums have stayed the same. No real changes have been made. So it's VA 4% maximum, FHA 6% maximum. Conventional depends on how much money they're putting down. Obviously, if they're putting down less than 10%, it's a max of 3%. If they put down more than 10%, it's a max of 6%. And then we always get into investment properties. Anytime they're doing an investment property, the max is 2%. So nothing has changed from that front.
And commissions are not going against those numbers, correct?
Correct. Commissions are looked at completely separate. They do not eat into that. So whatever commissions get negotiated for the seller to pay has no impact on the maximum seller paid allowed.
Cool. Adam.
So just to piggyback on Linda's comment, maybe for some of the newer agents, it's very important how you write up the seller credit, right? So like $5,000, I don't know who they're using to close with, but I got to imagine they could eat that up very quickly. But you might see a seller credit for $15,000, right? So the way I've always been trained to kind of write this is to make sure you're specifying it's for closing costs, points, prepaids, and escrows, right? So prepaid, as an example, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, could be town taxes, right? So there's some towns in Western Mass that collect 6 months at closing. So I don't know if Long Meadow is one, but you're buying a house in a high tax town, they might be collecting $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in city taxes at closing that those closing costs can go by. So it's very important that you are writing as the buyer's agent that it's not just for closing costs. It's closing cost points, prepaids, and escrows to help chew up, some of those larger seller credits.
Yeah,
Eric, just
You're right,
speak
Adam.
to that. And Eric, I'm just curious, when we use that language, right, outside of commissions, what else can seller pay and not hit those percentages that you talked about, those maximums?
So there's nothing they can really pay outside of your commissions that don't
Okay.
count towards the maximum.
Okay.
So everything, and if I like the verbiage that you use in Adam because it gets very specific. If you don't want to write all of that out, you can put any and all allowable closing costs. Because then we would reference, like, if you open up the FHA handbook, it literally has a section that says allowable closing costs. If we open up the Fannie Mae guide, it says allowable closing costs. And then us as a lender would follow it right in there, which is city and town taxes being paid forward, like you just talked about. A lot of towns want you to pay them ahead of time at closing so that you're actually 3 months ahead. First year of homeowners insurance is a big one. A lot of people believe, hey, I'm going to include my insurance in my mortgage payment. Well, if you haven't paid the insurance company anything yet, and you had a claim on day one, how would they pay it? You wouldn't really be bound. So there's a big misconception there. The insurance company wants to be paid in full at or before closing for that first year. And then we include it in the payment going forward so that when you come up for renewal, there's money. So that's a big one that adds to the amount of closing costs needed is homeowners insurance, because we're seeing it go up everywhere. I'm sure any of you who own a house, we all used to pay $700 and $800 for our homeowners insurance. It's much higher than that now. And then obviously there's some people from Florida in here. We're definitely seeing much higher premiums down there in Florida, for that first year. So, then when you want to include your taxes and insurance in your payment, because let's say we're closing on a house today, February 28th, you're not going to make your first payment until April. So there's no money going into the escrow account until April 1st. In a lot of places, taxes are due quarterly. So April 1st, there could be a tax bill due. So that's when you see, if you look on a closing disclosure, we put a couple months of taxes and a couple months of insurance in as a buffer. So between first year of insurance, maybe taxes being paid forward if needed, and then 2 months of taxes, 2 months of insurance, building the escrow account. That's a lot of prepaids right there. That's going to be utilized from the closing cost. Then we get into the title attorney, all their costs, recording down at the town hall, and all of that, and then any lender fees. So closing costs add up quickly. Obviously, we always used to talk about $5,000. We also used to sell, $150,000, $200,000 houses. Everything has gone up. The cost of insurance has gone up. Town taxes have gone up, and just the overall price of a property has gone up, which impacts everything all the way down the line. So we're definitely seeing much higher than 5,000. But again, when you're putting an offer together, feel free to reach out to Dan or myself. We can dial that number in for you. You tell us, hey, we're using, ABC title. We'll go in. We have a thing called smart fees. We can get their quoted fees within seconds. We can plan on an estimate of what their insurance is going to be. You can tell us what the taxes are from the MLS. So we can really hone that number in to make sure you're asking for enough seller paid, and also that you're not asking for way too much that we're going to have to try to eat up later.
Awesome. Well, let's end on that. It is Friday. I'm trying to get you guys out of here at 9 o'clock every day. Good stuff today. I hope that you guys all have an amazing weekend. Hopefully you have some weird stuff happen on your transactions. Jot that stuff down and come back to us on Monday, and let's talk through it, whether it was a win, a loss, or just a good share for the group. We'll finish up with just the training that's available today. Let me get these up on the screen really quick. Not sure why this is coming in so dark. Not the most shareable thing, but what do we have? A couple of different opportunities today. Grow your business from 10 to 100 sales. I think we saw that earlier in the week. And then every door direct marketing, geo farming. So this is a program if you wanted to start to build out a geo farm. They make it really, really easy to do that. So yeah, go have yourselves an awesome weekend. Share the show. Get some other people to come and share their experiences. If you're on social, come join us live on the Zoom call. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Thank you.
Good
Have a great
weekend.
weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.